There are a lot of fighting games on the PlayStation, let's make no mistake about that. You have a varying mix of iconic, underrated and yet often unknown fighting games that were released on the system that play from both 3D and 2D styles, many of them of which were released in Japan only, and it's only in recent times that we have the ability to now play them and experience them to see what they're like. And in many cases there are some games out there that are questionable, but there are a few hidden gems that you will find along the way that are actually decent and worth trying out. And here we have, now I do apologise in advance if I get this name wrong because it is a tough one, Choujin Gakuen Gowcaizer, again I do apologise if I butchered that, is a fighting game that was released in Japan only for the PlayStation in 1997, and this is a 2D fighting game that reflects very similar to popular arcade style fighters that were seen at the time when you had the likes of Street Fighter. There was also games even with the likes of Double Dragon, which also seen a fighting game port of the iconic beat 'em up series that was also released on the arcades and on the PlayStation itself during the mid-90s. So there were many other games that would follow suit. So this game would act more like a superhero, almost kind of futuristic, cyberpunk style game that contributes its own story with regards to the selection of characters that are available. The one thing to note with this as well, having played Double Dragon, the fighting game version, which I have covered in a previous video, there are a lot of similarities in this game compared to that. When you have access to the different modes, the characters, many of these games back in the day tried to implement different types of modes, and one primarily being a somewhat made up 3D mode where everything was played on a 2D plane but was also focused around a 3D kind of aesthetic where the camera would move around to make everything look like as if it was moving in 3D, which looks really cool but can be very off-putting if you're not used to that style, and in many cases it wouldn't suit everybody because there's so much going on. If you suffered with motion sickness at all, it would definitely trigger that for sure. But it is a really nice touch, and it actually does look very, very cool, because it did look cool in Double Dragon and it does look equally as cool in this. But I think to get the best experience out of the game you would have to play it in its main 2D perspective. So you have access to a number of different characters and they all have their own unique traits and abilities, and many of them start off with just their normal versions, but they can morph into more powerful versions of themselves where they have their own special moves, powerful weapons, explosive features and combo moves that you can use to take out your enemies. So it's just a combination of many different styles that you would see from a multitude of other fighting games at that time, but that tries to offer something a little bit different at the same time. As while many of these fighting games that were on the system and even in the arcades, they were all very similar in how they look, feel and played, but they all tried to be unique. Let's just put it that way. So with this game it was no different. You had your 2D fighting styles, your moves and so forth, but this game really goes for that futuristic aesthetic, and it can definitely be represented when you look at the visual aesthetics with the backgrounds and environments, as the 2D graphics in this game are beautiful to look at. That's the one thing that you can definitely say with these 2D fighters that were on the system, and even just in the 32-bit era of games consoles in general. Even when the PlayStation, but you also had the Sega Saturn, and both consoles were very, very good at being able to produce really high quality 2D fighting games that looked visually stunning and that still hold out really well today and are still just as playable now as they've ever been. And this game is no different to that. There's a lot of really nice features in this. It has some really cool character designs and models that are available, while there doesn't seem to be much in terms of a story as such, because every time you defeat an enemy or an opponent you're just greeted with a victory screen of the character that you were playing as, and they try to tell the story in a little way in some regards, but it gives you very little. It's not really until you finish the game at the end, but even at that it still doesn't give you an overall vision as to each character's background. But it's just one of those games, I suppose, you just play for the experience itself rather than anything else, as you will be able to access other characters and unlockable features the more you play further into the game. So there's loads of different environments as well, aside from the futuristic elements where you can fight like in old churches, on marketplaces, city streets. So there's definitely a varying mix of different styles that will suit each player, especially if you do enjoy these type of games. Some characters are easier to pick up and play and use than others, and you'll find their movesets easier to implement and execute, while others will definitely take a little bit more finesse and refinement in order to understand all of the various combos and special features that they'll have at their disposal. But as with time and patience you'll figure that out. It's just another one of those unique fighting games that is worth adding to your list. It's very unknown to many, but definitely definitely offers enough here that will scratch that itch if you are a fan of these type of games. If you're looking for an alternative to the many other iconic fighter games that I've mentioned already on the system, this is worth checking out. It's very fast paced, it's very frantic, there's a lot of really cool moves and features with great animations, great visuals. There's a lot to like here. But I would love to know your thoughts of this if you have tried it yourself, and are you into these unique and obscure arcade fighting games that were released on the PlayStation in Japan? So be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated of future content. And if you would like to see more videos around other types of quirky and obscure fighting games similar to this, then you can check out the playlist on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.